Hello, I'm Julie Tupler, creator of the Tupler Technique, and welcome to my Diastasis Don'ts webinar. This webinar is a thank you for all your support. Closing a diastasis with the Tupler Technique requires a new awareness about your body. I call it a diastasis safe awareness. What we're going to do in this webinar is first, I'm going to do a little presentation of diastasis do's and don'ts. Then I'm going to do a couple of demonstrations of putting on the splint so it stays in place better, the new way of double splinting, and measuring your back so you get the right size for your splint. So let me get started with the diastasis don'ts. Okay, so I want to start with defining a diastasis. It is a separation of the outermost abdominal muscles. This muscle is called the rectus abdominis, and you can see to the right the picture of the rectus abdominis when it's closed and when it's open. And the function of this outermost muscle is to support your back and your organs. When it separates, then the job of supporting it no longer exists. It now becomes the weakened connective tissue supporting your back and organs. It is caused by continuous intra-abdominal force, pressure, and stretching of the connective tissue that joins the two muscles. As the muscles separate, the connective tissue stretches sideways and becomes thinner and weaker. So obviously, if it's not doing its job as a support system, the effect on your body is back pain, gastrointestinal problems, bloating and constipation, poor posture, umbilical hernia, and a diastasis puts pregnant women at risk for a C-section as the uterus is not properly supported anymore. It's supported by this weak connective tissue. Closing a diastasis, then, is all about healing your connective tissue. The Tupler Technique program heals connective tissue by doing three things. Number one, it puts the connective tissue and your muscles in a better position to heal and do the exercises. This is done with the Diastasis Rehab splint. Number two, it protects the connective tissue from intra-abdominal force, pressure, and being stretched. These three things weaken your connective tissue. And number three, it strengthens your core or transverse abdominal muscle. The Tupler Technique is a four-step program. Step one are the seated exercise, the elevator, the contracting, and then the backlying head lift, which is done in week 4 of the program. Step 2 is splinting, wearing, and then in week 4 of the program, holding another splint, which is a scarf for the arms of your sweater. Number 3 is having your transverse muscle be your best friend. You need this muscle to be strong, and you need to know how to use it. Step 4 is getting up and down correctly, from seated to standing, standing to seated, seated to backlying, and backlying up. It's a 4-step program, and for many people, it seems overwhelming. I had a mom of 4 say to me, I can't do all this. I just can't do it. Well, what I told her was that just do what you can. If you can wear the splint all the time and just think about your transverse and get up and down correctly, and then if you can even just do the exercises once a day, that would be helpful. So let's talk about splinting don'ts now. Don't wear a compression binder while doing the program. A compression binder, their function is to bring the abdominals back to the spine. And that really is the job of your transverse muscle. And once it becomes strong, it's going to be able to do that. So do wear the Diastasis Rehab splint to correctly position your connective tissue and muscles. This splint brings the connective tissue and muscles together. Don't wear just the splint to close your diastasis. People think that just wearing the splint is going to close the diastasis. It doesn't. You need to do all 4 steps of the program to close your diastasis. Don't attach the 3 arms of the splint to the wrong place on the pad. Do put the splint on in front of a mirror so you can see where you are attaching the arms. Don't wear the splint too tight. This can cause problems. Do pull each half of the muscle towards the middle when putting on the splint and attach the arm without stretching it too much. I'm going to demonstrate this during the demonstration part of the webinar. Don't wear the splint while doing your, don't just wear the splint while doing your exercises. Do wear the splint all the time. Take it off just to bathe. Don't eat too much when wearing the splint. Do eat small meals. Wearing the splint puts your organs back in their original position, leaving less room for your stomach to expand. So you may get a little nauseous, you may get a little heartburn. These are side effects of wearing the splint, and especially if you eat too much. Don't round your back when sitting, standing, or doing activities of daily living. Do use a flat back when moving about to keep the splint in place. Don't wash the splint in the washing machine or put it in the dryer. Velcro is allergic to heat. Do hand wash it and air dry it. Don't detach and attach the arms too many times, as it takes the filament out of the Velcro. Do put it on in front of a mirror so you can put it on correctly. This is very important. That's why I'm repeating it again, to put the splint on in front of a mirror. Don't wear the splint directly on your skin. Do wear it over an undergarment. This way you can put Velcro on the bottom arm of the splint and on the undergarment to help it stay in place better and not right up. I'm going to show this in the demonstration part of the webinar. Also, if you wear it over an undergarment, you don't have to wash it that much. Don't wear a splint that is too big on you. It's too bulky. It is too big if the arms of the splint attach at the back of the pad instead of on the side. And it's also harder to put it on. Put a hem in the arms of the splint so they will attach on the side and thus fit you better. Don't stop wearing the splint after 18 weeks. Your diastasis might not be closed after 18 weeks. Do stop wearing the splint when your diastasis is closed. Your diastasis is closed when your connective tissue is shallow. And if you're checking yourself, you should know if it's shallow, medium, or deep. Don't wear the splint if you have any heart conditions. Do ask your doctor about wearing it. We are glad to speak with your doctor about the program. If you can't wear a splint, you can always hold a splint while doing the exercises. Don't wear the splint during your first trimester of pregnancy when you are nauseous, as wearing a splint can make you nauseous. Do wear a splint in your second trimester when you are feeling better. Also, after you have a C-section, you need to wait until the C-section scar is healed before you wear the splint. You can start doing the exercises, though, right after a C-section. Don't start double splinting until week 4 of the program. Do start double splinting in week 4 of the program after your transverse muscle has been strengthened. Don't pull the splint with each repetition when doing the seated contracting exercise. Do pull the splint at the beginning of the seated contracting exercise and lock it in place by putting the bottom hand above the top hand. Then relax your arms. I will be demonstrating this in the demonstration part of the webinar. Don't move your back when you pull the splint when doing the head lifts. This flares your ribs, and flaring your ribs stretches your connective tissue. Do remember to bring your ribs in step 4. Now I'm going to talk about the Tupler Technique seated exercise don'ts. Don't do any other exercise during the first 6 weeks. We really recommend that you don't do any other exercise in order to allow your connective tissue to heal as you strengthen your transverse muscle. So do just the Tupler technique during the first 6 weeks. Don't inhale and bring your belly back before you start the exercise. Do start the exercise with a belly breath by expanding your belly when you take air in through the nose. Exhale through your mouth and bring your belly back to your spine. Don't hold your breath. Do count out loud to prevent force on both your connective tissue and pelvic floor muscles. And as you know, force weakens the connective tissue. The louder you count, the more oxygen you get. Don't move your back when doing a belly breath or the exercises. If you move your back, you can flare your ribs, and flaring your ribs will stretch the connective tissue. Do rest your back on a pillow so the back muscles are not moving or working while doing the abdominal exercises. You can also do these exercises while you are driving, so it's a good idea to put a pillow behind your back when you're driving. Don't do all the exercise at one time as your transverse is not strong enough. Do the exercises 3 times a day as shown in the guidebook, and if you can only do it once a day, then just do it once a day, but have those really be quality, working the muscle in a quality way. If the muscle gets fatigued, then you're not going to be really doing anything. Don't use your shoulder or leg muscles when doing the seated exercises. If a muscle is weak, which your transverse muscle is when you first start, it'll ask other muscles to help out, and usually the muscles that it asks is the shoulders and your legs. So do close your eyes and see the shoulder and leg muscles relax as the abdominal muscles are doing the exercises. Don't do the contracting exercises too fast. Do squeeze and hold the backward movement as you count out loud. So you can say in your mind, squeeze and hold 1, squeeze and hold 2, to remind yourself to do this. Now I'm going to talk about the Tupler Technique head lift exercise don'ts. Don't start the head lifts until week 4 of the program, until after you have strengthened your transverse muscle. Do start the head lifts with a warm-up of 10 reps of the contracting exercise so you can feel the muscle working in a back-lying position where gravity makes it harder to do. Don't do the head lifts if you are unable to hold in your transverse for 3 of the repetitions. Do the 5-step head lift without lifting your head if you cannot hold your transverse in when you lift your head for 3 repetitions. So when you're doing this head lift, your hands and your mind are on your belly. Your eyes are closed, and all your attention is on when you lift the head, are you able to hold that transverse in? You do not want to undo all your good work by doing these head lifts incorrectly. Don't start the head lifts with your eyes open or heels too far away from your buttocks. Do the head lifts with your eyes closed so you can do the visualization of the zip and bringing the ribs in. Also, when you're lifting the head. Also, keep your heels close to your buttocks so your back does not come too far off the floor. If your feet are too far away and your back comes off the floor, this will flare your ribs. And as you know, flaring your ribs will stretch your connective tissue. Don't start the head lift by inhaling, just like we don't start the seated exercises with inhaling. Do start the head lift with a belly breath so your muscles are in the right starting position to be in when you lift your head. If they are out when you're lifting your head, this is force on the weak connective tissue. Don't move your pelvis when bringing your transverse to your spine. After 3 weeks of strengthening your transverse, you should be able to be strong enough to bring just your transverse to your spine and hold it there. Don't move your back when you pull the splint, as it will flare your ribs. Do keep your back still while you pull the splint. Relax your arms after you pull the splint. Don't bring your shoulders off the floor when doing a head lift, as it is impossible to engage your transverse muscle. If you can't engage your transverse muscle, it's forward force on the weak connective tissue. So don't do any more crunches. So just bring your head off the floor. No shoulders. Don't forget that each head lift is 5 steps. See the 5 steps in your guidebook. Moving on to transverse don'ts. Don't hold your transverse in at 5th floor while you are walking or doing any aerobic activities. Do belly breaths when you are walking or doing any aerobic activities. Expand the belly and bring the transverse to 5th floor, and then give it a squeeze. Don't have your head come off the floor when getting yourself from a seated to back-lying position or from a back-lying to seated position. Do keep your head down before you roll to the side to get to a sitting position. When getting down to a back-lying position, make sure your head touches the floor before you roll on your back. You are then able to hold your transverse in when you do this. Don't sneeze, cough, or have a bowel movement without holding your transverse in. Do put your hands on your belly when sneezing, coughing, or having a bowel movement. This will give you an awareness that you are holding your transverse in. Don't do these exercises ever again. You can see crunches and crossover crunches. Pilates 100 roll-ups and rollbacks. With these exercises, it is physically impossible to hold the transverse in. With the shoulders off the floor, again, it's impossible to hold the transverse in. And if you can't hold it in, it is intra-abdominal force on your weak connective tissue. Don't do exercises in this position with a diastasis. In this hands and knees position, all the weight of the organs puts pressure on the weak connective tissue, weakening it even further. So no hands and knees position if you have a diastasis. Swimming uses this position. The swimming strokes that you do with your arms and upper body cause flaring of the ribs, which stretches and weakens the connective tissue. So swimming really has 2 strikes against it. Don't do crossover movements with the diastasis. Crossover movements are a shearing movement that stretch the connective tissue. Stretching the connective tissue weakens it. Avoid activities like golf, tennis, softball, and kickboxing. Once you close your diastasis, check your abdominals before and after you do these activities to make sure you are not opening it up again. Make sure you use your transverse muscle when doing these activities. Some of my clients even like to wear a splint when doing these activities as a reminder to hold their transverse in. Never do this exercise in the photo, as it both stretches and puts intra-abdominal force on the weak connective tissue, a double whammy. And don't forget these things. Don't let your progress go undocumented. Do take photos of your belly from the front and the side before you start the program, and then again in weeks 3, 6, and 18. Write down your body circumference and diastasis measurements in the Tupler Technique guidebook. These will motivate you to continue to do the program for the rest of your life. Don't forget to incorporate the Tupler Technique into your exercise routine when you start exercising in week 6 of the program. You may still have a diastasis. Do remember you can always open your diastasis if you have closed it, or make it larger if it is not closed after 6 weeks. Don't stop the program after 18 weeks or after your diastasis has closed. Do continue the program whether or not your diastasis has closed. Let's talk about maintenance after 18 weeks. If you have closed your diastasis, which again means shallow connective tissue, you do not have to wear the splint. However, continue for the rest of your life the contracting exercise. If you can do 5 to 10 sets of 100 a day, you will have a nice strong transverse, and that's really important. 2, incorporate the transverse muscle into your activities of daily living and your exercise routine. And 3, continue to get up and down correctly. Maintenance after 18 weeks if you have not closed your diastasis. So you want to continue to wear the splint until it does close. You want to do the contracting exercise. If you can do 10 to 20 sets of 100 a day, this is going to speed up the process. And as I said before, a strong transverse is so important. 3, continue to incorporate the transverse muscle into your activities of daily living and your exercise routine. And 4, get up and down correctly. And the most important don't get discouraged. This is something that happens a lot of the times. So I want to say that healing connective tissue is not an overnight process, but a process that can be done by anyone at any time. With a severe diastasis, it may take a year or more, so hang in there. Take photos, as they will encourage you to continue the program. If you fall off the wagon, it is easy to get back on again. If you do not have to start at week 1. You should be able to start at week 6. And most important, do what you can do. Something is better than nothing. So now I'm going to show you the 24-hour discounts, so get your pen and paper ready. We will also be flashing these on the website, and the discounts will go up till 2 o'clock tomorrow. And these, again, are a thank you for all your support. So these are our 24-hour discounts. Discount number 1 is $10 off our beige splint. Spring is coming. You'll probably want to wear a lighter splint under your clothing. The code is, and use capital letters, capital D, capital D, capital D, BSP10. Discount number 2 is $5 off the already discounted Women's Package 1. So if you're just coming on and you don't have the package yet, you can get $15 off the package until 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. The code is capital D, capital D, capital D, WP15. Discount number 3 is $25 off a 1-hour Skype session with me. It is usually $225. It will now be $200, and the code is DDD Skype 25. Discount number 4 is $25 off our 6-week online support program. The next class starts March 30th, and the code, little letters, is BB Online 2013. I only take 12 people in the class, and it's half full now, so if you're interested in signing up, you should do this right away and use the discount code. This is the next best thing to getting support if you don't have a licensee in your area. And last but not least, I just wanted to announce that this week my Lose Your Mummy Tummy DVD and my Tupler Technique guidebook are now in Spanish and Portuguese. So this discount ends tomorrow, March 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, if you didn't write it down, the codes, we will have them on the home page on the red banner. Okay, now I want to do some demonstrations. Okay, the first thing that I want to demonstrate, I'm going to make sure that you all can see me. To move this back just a little bit more. Perfect. First thing that I want to demonstrate is how to double splint correctly. In the video, it shows double splinting as doing this and then relaxing. So first of all, we start double splinting, as I mentioned earlier, in week 4 of the program, after you've strengthened your transverse muscle. So what you want to do is when you double splint, you want to cross it over and switch hands. What you want to do is bring the muscles towards the middle. Many times people go like this with the hands going away, and that really doesn't work. So you want to make sure that you take, my left hand goes to the right side and pulls towards the middle. My right hand goes to the left side and pulls towards the middle, and you want to be right here. Now, after you pull it to the middle, you want to take the bottom hand and bring it up, lock it in, and then you're right here so that you can, your fist over fist. Make sure you don't do anything weird with your wrist, flexing it like this. Keep your wrist nice and flat. Again, so you pull towards the middle, lock it in, and here, and then relax the arms. So with the seated exercise, it's just one pull for the whole 100 repetitions. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is how to measure your back, because people ask me all the time, where on my back should I measure? Well, if the splint is going right under your breast, then you should measure your back right at that area. From right at the level, right under your breast, come around your back, and then go to the middle of your other underarm right under your breast. That's where you should measure to get the right size for the pad. The next thing I want to demonstrate is how to put the splint on so it stays in place better. It's very difficult to splint between 2 sets of bones, and it's even more difficult if you're short-waisted. If you're short-waisted, I recommend making your own splint so it fits you better. The pad on this splint is about 8 inches high. So if you do half of that, you should measure, what distance you have, and then get 2 arms. If you could do it 4 inches, then you could have a 4-inch elastic arm on one side and a 4-inch elastic arm on the other. During pregnancy, you still want to measure the, make sure that the pad size is right. But your belly is going to be growing, so you probably want to get the extenders so that the arms can be accommodated for the growing belly, and that's how you do it with the extenders. They just attach onto the end of the arm. Okay, so in getting your size also, another thing that I want to mention is that in this new splint here, there's some stretch to it, okay? Sometimes people like more support in their back. I've had clients put stays in it so it stays up better on their back. That's perfectly fine. A lot of times people feel that that's uncomfortable. Now, with this pad, all right, because it stretches a little bit more, when you're determining what size that you should get, because it stretches, if you're like an inch bigger, go with the smaller size, because eventually you will be, and it can accommodate with the stretch here. So you see the label here, that goes on the lower left-hand side. Okay? Now, I don't need a mirror because I can see myself right in the computer. Now you see on my t-shirt this little white piece of fabric. That is the loop part of the Velcro. And I have one client that bought about 5 little t-shirts, little like this, and she has sewed it on all of them because it stays in place better when you secure the bottom arm. And you can see on the bottom arm on here, I'm going to bring this up close here so that you can see, there's the hook part of the Velcro on there. And that's just right in the middle of the arm. You can see it's dead center. Okay? So we want to make sure that the pad is even. Okay, my knees are soft. My transverse, of course, is in. I cross over. The top arm always stays top. Goes across, and then I switch hands. I gather it up, and I gather it up here. Transverse is in. Now, my hand is touching my belly because the whole point of this is bringing the two separated muscles together. So with my hand touching my belly, my transverse in, I'm moving the muscle over. With this hand, the heel of this hand, I hold it in that position, and then I straighten it. All right? And then I can just attach it to the side here. Okay? Now, once I attach it, I can make sure that it's even, that one side isn't higher than the other. And it should attach to your side. Okay, it shouldn't attach in the back. This one actually is getting a little bit big on me. Okay, too much Tupler technique work. Okay, then I gather the other one. Knees are bent, transverse is in, and I'm going to, with the heel of my hand, move the muscle over to the middle. This is important that you manually move the muscle, and it's going on a diagonal up, and it's going up on top here on the side. Okay? Don't do it too high because it'll be on the skin and it'll irritate your skin. Last one, transverse in, and I'm going to bring it across, and then I'm going to Velcro it. I'm going to Velcro it here, and then Velcro it there. So you can adjust. I'm going to do this a little bit tighter for myself here, and then on the bottom here. Okay, so that's what it looks like. All right, a couple other things. As you get smaller and you're stretching the arms are going to stretch out. So in a couple of weeks, you're going to probably need to make the arms smaller. How do you do this? You can just, I don't sew, so I would take it to a seamstress. You would just take the arms off, and if by chance you got, the pad is too big, you can always cut the pad, have your seamstress stitch it, and then you can measure and to see how long you need the arms, and then just cut it wherever you need to cut it and sew it back on. It's very, very easy to modify these splints. Now, I want to say one more thing about crossover exercises. When you do crossover exercise, I want to show you that this movement of doing crossover exercise is a shearing movement, and this is what a shearing movement looks like that stretches your connective tissue. So those are the things that I wanted to demonstrate. So now is the time that I'm going to answer questions. I'm going to put my glasses back on so I can read them. And the question says, I'm going to go up to the beginning questions. My splint keeps riding up throughout the day. What should I do? Okay. What you need to do is secure that bottom arm. All right? That will keep it in place better. Also, when getting up and getting down, you need to get up and down with a flat back. Okay? If you round your back, the splint is going to go out of place. My diastasis appears to be higher than most. The diastasis does not extend below the navel. Should I thus wear it higher? You should wear the splint from up here to the top of your hip bone. If it goes below the hip bone, it's not going to stay in place. It's going to ride up because of those hip bones. In week 4, we'll be double splinting, and then you can focus holding the splint in the area where your diastasis is the biggest. After the diastasis is closed, what exercise should be continued to maintain the closed diastasis? I talked about all that in maintenance. So one of the things I need to mention is that if you came in late and you didn't see part of the webinar, we will have this webinar posted so that you can review this as many times as you like. It's going to be a permanent fixture on our website. So to answer that question, how many reps? If you have closed it, you're going to be wanting to do, 5 to 10 sets of the contracting and continue the other 3 steps. If you've closed it, you don't need to wear the splint. If you haven't closed it, then you need to wear the splint and do the contracting 10 to 20 and then incorporate it, the Tupler technique, into your exercise routine. With each repetition, you should be doing 5th to 6th floor. And that is on the, there's a exercise routine on the men's and women's DVD. My diastasis is now closed above and below my navel after 18 weeks of exercise, but it's about 3 finger separation over the navel. Can I stop wearing the splint and do the maintenance routine? No. No, you cannot. If you have a 3 finger, and I don't know how deep it is, but 3 fingers, and even if it's medium, no, you're going to wait till it's 1 finger shallow. Certainly, if it's really, really shallow, you can, if you absolutely don't want to wear it, you don't have to wear it. But I do recommend at least 2 fingers shallow before you stop wearing the splint. The splint quickly closed the diastasis on my upper abdomen, but I'm having a hard time getting the same results for my lower abdomen. Wait, oh, that question went away. I don't know where that question went. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. But, okay, I lost that question. Whoever wrote that question, I'm so sorry. It just disappeared. One of the questions is, must I really give up swimming? Well, if you have a diastasis and you want to close it, then you have to give it up until you close it, because it's 2 things. You're in this position where all the weight of the organs, and usually with the strokes, it does. This is how the connective tissue stretches, by doing, when you flare the ribs, the connective tissue, that when you see my ribs go like this, the connective tissue in between stretches sideways. So I would not recommend swimming until your diastasis closes. If my belly bulges, one of the things that I was going to say is that you can always double splint and focus on the area that's the largest. Because sometimes people say, well, I closed it here, in the top and the middle, but I wasn't able to close the bottom. I have a lady that says, I stopped after 3 weeks of Tupler technique because of my baby's need. Should I restart from the beginning, week 1, or should I restart where I left off at week 4? Well, in week 4, you're doing head lifts, so I would repeat. I would go back to week 3 and see how strong your transverse is. If you can do 10 sets of 100 of the seated contracting, then your transverse is strong enough. But I would repeat 1 week, week 3, 5th to 6th, and do 5 sets of 100, and then go to week 4. So I would repeat week 3. If newly pregnant with only slight diastasis, is a splint necessary? Are all exercises safe in pregnancy? As I mentioned, I don't normally recommend wearing the splint in the first trimester because you're nauseous and it's just not a good idea. So in second trimester, you can wear it if you want. Certainly, you should do the exercises, the seated in the back line, wearing a splint. And you say, are all exercises safe? In the back lying position, the head lifts, we recommend that if you feel lightheaded or dizzy, in a back lying position, you roll to the side. Some women, pregnant women, can tolerate being in a back lying position longer than other women. Just depends upon the position of your baby. So if if you're doing back lying head lifts, just roll to the, and you feel lightheaded or dizzy, roll to the side. So usually not more than 3 minutes. Motionless standing is not great for pregnant women because of the increased blood volume, and the relaxin that hits the cartilage in the blood vessels makes the blood flow a little bit more difficult. So if you're doing upper body exercises, do them seated instead of standing, and don't do anything that puts you at risk for falling. In my exercise, the exercise portion of my DVD, those are all safe. Everything is seated, and just as I recommend. And in the Perfect Pushing DVD, it teaches how to push, and it also gives the modifications for exercise during pregnancy. Having a small diastasis during pregnancy is really important to prevent back problems and also to help you push effectively in labor. You want to probably bring a splint and hold it to keep the muscles together and to keep the uterus in the right position, because what happens is with the diastasis, the uterus will tilt forward and the cervix will be pointing here instead of down here, lined up with the vaginal canal. So it's very important to know how to push with the abdominals and relax the pelvic floor. It'll prevent a lot of issues with incontinence and with prolapses. So learning how to push during the pregnancy will help you in labor with pushing. Is Zumba or weight training okay if you keep wearing the splint? During the first 6 weeks of the program, we recommend not doing any other exercise until you've strengthened the transverse muscle and allowed the connective tissue to heal a bit. In week 6, it just depends upon what moves in Zumba, and what is the other one that you said? Or weight training. And with weight training, it just depends upon what you're doing. With the weight, you're going to be wanting to hold the transverse, and your transverse has to be strong enough to be able to use it on the work, and that's usually not until week 6 that we recommend that, once you have a strong transverse. I have an umbilical hernia along with my diastasis. What are the chances that this technique will help fix that? I'm so glad you asked that. An umbilical hernia is a side effect of a diastasis because of weak connective tissue. Once you strengthen the connective tissue, it brings support to your belly button, and it will go from an outie to an innie. So the umbilical hernia will be helped by doing this program. Absolutely. Have others had trouble with feet swelling while wearing the splint? Is this due to the splint being too tight or a possible heart condition related to high blood pressure? As I mentioned, if you wear the splint too tight, people have gotten numbness, people have gotten pain. Please do not wear the splint too tight. And if you have a heart condition, because the splint is bringing the muscles together, it puts the organs back in their original position, and if they've been displaced for a long time, this can affect the organs above and below it. So do not wear the splint too tight. Put it on where you bring the muscles over instead of stretching it a lot and attaching it. Just straighten it and just stretch it a little and attach it so it's not so tight. The other thing that I want to mention, another side effect possibly, that maybe of the thousands of people that I've trained, 2 people that I know have gotten an infection in their belly button. So what I'm going to tell everybody is, before you put your splint back on, make sure you get that towel in there and dry out your belly button, so that we don't want it to be moist and have some sort of bacteria growing in there. So before you put the splint back on after you shower, please make sure that you dry your belly button. Do they have classes I can take in San Antonio? Or could I hire a trainer to help me with the video if I feel I'm doing it incorrectly? I do not have anybody in Texas as yet. We are looking for medical and fitness professionals to do the program. Certainly, if you find somebody or you know somebody, part of their training is that they have to do 2 case studies, so you could get trained for free. So the next best thing is having individual Skype sessions with me, because I can see you. I can't, of course, put my hands, but I can look at you and see if your alignment is out and see if you're doing the exercises incorrectly. Oh, just wanted to say that one. Let's see. I successfully closed my diastasis last October, but I think my connective tissue is still quite weak as it opened up again slightly. I got back on the program and it closed again. How can I be sure when your connective tissue is strong? Well, when you're testing yourself, if you look at my finger, the connective tissue shallow would be from here to the first line. You don't want it to go any deeper than that right in your belly button. And with your belly button, because you have that weak spot in the connective tissue, that's the reason really why you put any force or pressure continuously on that belly button, that weak spot, it will open up again. But above and below, you won't even, you shouldn't even be able to feel anything. But at the belly button, you will be able to sink in because it is a belly button. But it shouldn't go any lower than this part of my finger. You'll also know when you're testing yourself for your diastasis that it's getting stronger, because when you first test yourself, if you see when you come up and you see a half football-like bulge, then you need 2 hands to check it. If you have an umbilical hernia, then you need 2 hands to check it. If you feel like a little pulsing when you're checking, you know that your connective tissue is weak. As you do the program, you will feel this pulsing get weaker and weaker. You will see changes with your belly button, and you will see that little alien-like bulge getting smaller and smaller as it begins to close. How often should I replace a splint? Well, it depends how hard you are on the splint. If you've been stretching it, if you've been putting it in the washer, in the dryer and stuff, you will know. Sometimes people, just want to have a brand new splint because the elastic feels a little bit better. I use a woven elastic, which is a strong elastic, but even a woven elastic, you keep on pulling on it, wears out. So when do you replace it? You have to make that call. If you don't want to be hemming it and and making alterations, and you just want a brand new splint, then you should do that. And we now have a $10 discount until tomorrow afternoon. My 10-year-old daughter has a diastasis. Will your program help her? Can she safely wear a splint? My daughter had a diastasis also, and we are doing more and more work with children. And I don't know if you've looked on the website, but we do have the Belly Button Boogie DVD. And usually children at age 6 and up can understand and coordinate bringing the belly back to the spine. And yes, they can safely wear the splint. Again, you don't want to have them wear it too tight. And It's very upsetting to me because in New York, as part of the fitness gram for kids, they're having them do crunches. And crunches are the worst thing that you can do, because if you've looked at the DVD, you see that the outermost recti muscle is going like this. It's getting longer. And to strengthen a muscle, you want to make it shorter. With the head lift, it looks like this. So how we're strengthening is we're strengthening it from front to back with transverse and then top to bottom, 2 ways. So yes, your 10-year-old daughter can do the program and wear the splint safely. What advice do you have for women during pregnancy to prevent a diastasis? Well, you might, many women go into a diastasis, many women go into the pregnancy with a diastasis. So, in that point, you can only make it smaller. But to prevent it, I would recommend doing the Tupler Technique program before you get pregnant. That would be the way to prevent it. So then you go into the pregnancy, it's closed, and you can continue to maintain it, because the muscles during pregnancy can stretch without separating. I had a woman with twins. She came to one of my seminars, and I had 3 physical therapists there, and they all checked her, and after her pregnancy, she did not have a diastasis. And it's unheard of for a woman with twins not to have a diastasis, but she did the program early on in her pregnancy and right afterwards and did not have the diastasis. After diastasis, is it okay to do push-ups, swimming, and other exercises that you caution against? Well, the push-ups, yes, absolutely the push-ups, but you don't want to arch your back and flare, all right? When you're doing the exercises, you want to do the stabilization of bringing the ribs and the transverse in, all right? So you're going to be wanting to do that. With swimming, if you can swim and not arch your back with each one, yes. So if you can maintain that stabilization with swimming and with the push-ups, yes, then you can do those exercises. Never crunches, though. Okay. How do I know if my transverse muscle is strong? You know if your transverse muscle is strong if you're able to hold it in on the work of everything that you do. You will feel it in your back. You will feel it in the front, and it will just naturally get strong if you do the exercises. Remember, strengthening a muscle needs resistance, and you add resistance to this transverse exercising by squeezing and holding and controlling the release. So if you do the exercises, you'll be strong, and you'll see that you'll be able to hold it in when you sneeze, when you cough, when you stand up, when you sit down, and you're able to do that more naturally, and it's easier to do that, and you will feel the muscles working. Should I adjust my splint at the end of the day because I feel that my belly sticks out more at the end of the day? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely adjust it at the end of the day. You can take it off, again, in front of a mirror. Make sure you're putting it on correctly. But yes, definitely adjust it at the end of the day. Please describe what you mean by medium, shallow, and deep for the connective tissue. So if I'm looking at my finger here, from here to here would be shallow. In between here to here would be shallow medium. At the next line would be medium, and then anything above here is going to be deep. From this finger on is deep. I'm a physical therapist. How can I become a licensee? If you email me directly, julie@diastasisrehab.com, I can send you the licensing information packet, or you can download it off our website. If you go to Teach It, there's a drop down and it says licensing information packet. So either way, and I'm glad to talk to you about it. Let's see. I had my last child 23 years ago. Can I close my diastasis? A diastasis can be closed on anyone at any time. Pregnancy is just one of the causes of a diastasis. I have an 82-year-old man. I have an 82-year-old man. I have an 82-year-old man that has closed his diastasis, and he has never been pregnant. So, yes, so you can close that now. I'm going to do one more question because we have 5 more minutes, so we'll have to end soon. Somebody has asked me, where do I advertise? You should be famous. I miraculously stumbled upon you through vigorous Google searching. Well, thank you very much. I don't really advertise. I really don't advertise. All my work is through word of mouth. And I'm so thrilled that the condition diastasis recti is getting more recognition, because this condition has been ignored by the medical community. I am in the process now of doing some research out of the UK with a physical therapist, and this should be wonderful and bring a lot of attention to this condition. And also, I think the medical community will like this research. And my philosophy is that every belly should be checked for a diastasis. Anybody with back pain should be checked for a diastasis. So it's just about that time. So what I want to do is thank you again and again for all your support. I can't tell you your referrals to other people, to bringing your pictures to your doctor and showing the before and after picture. And what makes me so happy and makes my day is when you send me your before and after pictures. It's so amazing, and I just love it. So please keep on sending me your before and after pictures. I love them, and just know that I appreciate your referrals and all your support. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. Bye-bye.